it makes us sound really, really good as it starts. It's like, okay, the pressure is on because we need to talk about some good shit after that, after that intro. And the second thing was maybe it's so good that maybe the content doesn't really matter. It just sounds great. So it's either one or the other, you know. There's some people might feel one way or another, but it's good. Even the sound in the background, I think makes it a lot more enjoyable to listen to all the way through. And you should try one time. Try with the bird noises or like the forest noises in the background, because that might be really good. Like almost like ASMR stuff, you know. You listen to it and it's like, oh, it's kind of relaxing, you know.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, okay, maybe we
get people to fall asleep on it, and then we get the earring time way up. They fall asleep for a nap, but they listen to like 4 episodes back to back, and then we get the rankings up.
Or we just leave that long bit on the end for about 20 minutes, so then people fall asleep and they listen to them. Wow, people listen to this podcast for like 2.5 hours.
That's it. That's our strategy. Are you recording now? That's a good intro. That's good. That's a good intro to this.
I thought that was a little fun
episode.
Bit.
You know, it's one hack to get better rankings on your podcast. Make people fall asleep on it. Yeah. Than that, you know.
Yeah, we can try and prove that concept then.
Oh man, how are you?
Yeah, good man. Good. I'm
good.
Starving again. Whenever we do these at lunchtime, I forget to actually eat anything.
I mean, that's the price to pay.
Exactly. I've been swimming this morning. You know, super busy day. I've taken a baby swimming. Come back and do a podcast.
Nice. Oh man. So yeah, that's episode 2. That's it. We're on the roll. I'm doing this weekly.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try and stick to it and talk about some good marketing stuff. What should we start with? Should we start with that topic we discussed before? So I thought that was really interesting. This tweet from these guys I listen to almost every other day from another podcast called My First Million. Is one of the guys, Sean Puri, who's pretty prolific on Twitter. Tweeted something that I thought was really clever and probably true, which was that the next Zuckerberg is up all night coding up an AI girlfriend-boyfriend. And basically his point being that Steve Jobs fixed boredom with phones, smartphones. Zuckerberg fixed people watching with Facebook and Instagram, watching each other. And Spiegel fixed flirting with Snapchat, which is, you know, because your message delete after 24 hours, etc. And he's saying the next one would fix loneliness, which sounds about right with everything that we hear about AI and all the generative AI that's happening at the moment. It got me thinking a little bit about something that we spoke about, I think, not so long ago. This film from Spike Jonze that is literally bang on about that. But yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point. It's you know, even myself playing around with GPT. I can't remember what I was doing, messing around with it like every day doing something, but a few weeks ago I was going back and forth with it trying to fix something, and it got to a point where the conversation had like turned into a conversation. I was like, oh shit, you know, I kind of forgot for a few seconds that I was actually talking to not really talking to someone, you know, because it apologizes to you and it's like, oh sorry, I made a mistake there, and you're like, oh, that's
Did
cool.
You say please and thank you in your prompt? Did you say please?
Always, man, always always do that. You can't you don't want them to keep you in a database for when they take over of someone that was rude, you know. I want a quick painless death rather than a slow drawn out one, so.
Especially when they start thinking like, who's been nice to me? You want to be one of the nice. I did do that as well. Like when I was playing with ChatGPT in the last few months. Please, thank yous, and I was like, what am I doing? But yeah, no, it's makes sense. No, it's very interesting because I do think that what's happening now, it feels like it's already something that should be available or could be available. It feels like we have the technology now to have some level of relationship or life management with an AI that could do pretty much everything for you, especially with the advancements of the equivalent of what the App Store is for smartphone, the plugins side of things. If anything could be plugged into an AI to access data, any kind of data, that AI could do, sort out your emails, reply to your emails for you, suggest things to you, in terms of just optimization of your day to day, but also to fix loneliness, which is, probably one of the biggest problem, or will become more and more of a problem as we grow older.
Yeah.
Because of, everything that probably, most people are aware about at the moment, today, which is social media and having less and less connection with people, etc., etc.
I read a tweet from the guy that founded Gas App, Nikita Beer, a few months ago, and it was I can't remember it word for word, but it was something like, don't try and start an app to meet up with your friends in real life. And it's interesting because one of the projects we're working on at work at Hex is a project that kind of does that. It's trying to take, remedy the online. Everyone's online right now, and how do you get people to put the screen down and get back outside? Because I think it's easy to be in a situation where you have loads of friends, but you don't really see them. You don't.
Yeah.
It's nice when we go out and we get dinner, but most of the time you just chat over WhatsApp. And doing this is quite nice, even though I can't see you because the camera's in the way. But I think it is a problem that I don't think it's something that people realize they have. But if it was a bit insidious, you can imagine easy with, I'll let you give your example as how you think Apple could kind of nail that problem. But if it was as easy as fitting into your day-to-day life, I think you would just the problem would naturally be solved, or you would naturally become bonded almost to having that person interact with you on a daily basis. And I think once you go down that route, it would be really difficult to come back from.
Exactly. And I have no problem thinking people would get used to this way of doing or interacting with an AI, thinking it's like a human being very quickly. Like we said, on ChatGPT, straight away you're saying please, thank yous and stuff when you actually not talking to someone for real. So imagine if it's even more embedded into your day-to-day. You don't have to go onto a computer, which brings me back to that film, which I haven't seen for a while, but I've already seen about 10 times, which is integrated with your AirPods, with your earpiece, right? And the last few years there's been a lot of talk about, well, even to the point that Facebook changed their name into Meta and the whole metaverse things and VR, AR. They bought Oculus a few years ago and really trying to push that. But I really think that it's really easy to imagine that that's not going to be the case, because I don't know many people that actually want to wear a massive headset by themselves in their living room, even if you make the headset lighter or whatever. Being in the world by yourself, closing you off from the real world doesn't feel like the right next step for most people. Very hard to convince people to do that, but using something that we already have, which is these things like the AirPods, for example, from Apple, you just have to integrate an AI to this, and you already have, I don't know how many billions of people are already using Apple products. You can easily imagine that could be the easy next step for someone like Apple to take over the whole AI ecosystem, integrated within their bundle. You pay an extra 5-10 quid a month and you get this Siri Plus or whatever it is, Siri feels very outdated, but could be like repackaged into an AI assistant that actually does more than just being asked question. Could also like proactively tell you like, oh, you've got 30 more emails from this company, like what do you want me to do? And I can put it for spam to the spam for you, or already do it for you, because then it knows that you're going to say yes based on your previous answers. Like it could go like really it could go really, really far. And I think adding a layer of like some sort of relationship on top that could feel very real for people who are very alone. Not saying it's solving the problem. It's also like, I feel very scary about that stuff, but I do think we're very close to that. It doesn't feel like something that would be in 30 years, but more like in 5, if not less. So
yeah, definitely. It doesn't. Yeah, it definitely doesn't feel that far away. And I guess the difference with saying using Siri or Alexa to a certain extent, telling it to do something, is that those things, like you say, they do seem pretty dumb, and they are pretty dumb. Really, you need to be very specific with what you want them to do. But also, you could have all the context of what your phone already knows about you. So where you are, it's got your calendar in it. So if you're late for a meeting, you don't have to jump on Slack and say, or send an email and say I'm going to be late. It's like it's already ahead of you. Like your assistant is in Slack. Everyone has their like assistants in their Slack, for instance. And it's like, hey, Jake's held up on the train because train strikes on so and so. That would be amazing. It's not, and that's like just taking an extra piece of hassle out of your life. And I feel like that could just be something that could be switched on tomorrow. That technology is already there. So I think it's a scary path to go down. There was it's in the news this week that the guy, I've forgotten his name, but one of the guys who was big in the last kind of 20-30 years of developing AI to where it is today, has now said that he's concerned about the lack of regulation. You have to be, it has to be, if you want to start a car company and you want to build cars, you have to have all the regulations, all the red tape around how you do that. You've got the rules to follow. If you want to be a doctor, you have to go and you have to study not only not only what you need to know to be a doctor, but also the ethics behind that. And when you've got all this crazy technology that is being, someone could build an assistant, launch it could go crazy like most of the AI tools do. Everyone starts using it, but then it's got some malign purpose behind it, because it's some built by some unethical company that is using it to using it like almost like an advertising tool. It's suggesting things to you that is not what it should be.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like one of the things that was said is about regulation, but the thing that is different about this at the moment is that in the previous technological waves, regulation was always coming from politics and governments, and tech people would say no. And it's kind of reversed now. So the tech people who created or were behind the AI wave are now very quickly are the ones saying that we should regulate before governments and politics. And that's new, whatever that means. And where we're going with this, I think it's an interesting kind of reverse as to what we've seen before, for example with social media, and like the complete ignorance or lack of acknowledgement that it is negative for society, for kids, and for whatever, like all the kind of society change that happened since the beginning of social media, since the early 2000s or something. That was never the case that Mark Zuckerberg would come up and say, we are aware of these issues. Like that's always ignored. But in this case, it's different. So we'll see.
I think it's because they've seen behind the curtain and they know what is possible. They just it was Ahmad Mostak, I think his name was, just got it up in front of me here, and he's basically said that he's terrified. It's kind of gone so out of control that even as someone who's dedicated their whole life to it, is terrified of the possibility there. So I think it's good in a way, like you say, that that the big players are stepping up and saying we need to be sensible about this. But also it is pretty scary, because it's like once you let the genie out of the bottle, you can't get it back in. So even if
Yeah.
even if there are rules and regulations around it, there's so much open source out there, and
Yeah.
it's out there now. So who knows what's going to happen? And by the time we record the next podcast, there will probably already be a thing. There'll be $1 billion company that will solve that problem.
So exactly. So I think I don't know who. Obviously, it's hard to know like who's working on that kind of stuff at the moment, who's like in the background building the next, Meta or the next Google or the next big company that will use AI. But yeah, if you're in those circles and can have access to like some founders who work into that, into that field, into that space, like that's a good place to be, I think, for the next foreseeable future. So stay in those circles or try to be inside them.
Yeah, definitely. Someone asked me the other day what I thought about I think it was Google saying that they are working on a way to completely automate the end-to-end process of like marketing, to paid marketing on their platforms. And my response was that I wasn't surprised at all. And as you know, ever since we've started doing what we do, there's always been that push to automate it. It's not necessarily been AI, but now Advantage Plus, you put the bare minimum stuff in there and let the campaign run. On Google, you've got Performance Max, and it just makes complete sense to me that probably within the next 6 months you won't even have to provide copy or creative to Meta to build and optimize an entire campaign. Just plug your credit card in, give it your website, and then away it goes. So it's pretty mad, because the reason I bring that up is because you said people that are in that field, it's a good place to be. And I guess you could be a bit concerned about the future of marketing, or there's tons of jobs out there that could be replaced by AI. And I mean, in terms of the day-to-day optimization of campaigns, I mean, most of that is already automated, and there's no reason why it isn't going to follow that same trajectory. And with Mid-Journey and all the kind of visual AI stuff, people are already using that. Probably in 12 months' time, the majority of the ads that you're going to see are going to have been produced by some form of AI. So all you got to do is cut the middleman out. So the ads are running themselves. We all know creative is king at the moment, and always has been. And you need to be optimizing your creative, and that's what's going to win or lose. But once you've got a computer doing that, and it's understanding to much more finite detail the changes and optimizations it can make to that image, that will be the job of a marketer. Will just be, I don't know what it will be. It will be strategic. It will be strategic.
I was waiting for you to say it. I was like, oh, is he going to say? You build it up. You build it up good.
I don't know. I think that you should definitely have. I think that a job of a marketer will always be there, but your actual hands to keyboard role will most likely be orchestrating different pieces of technology to do most of the stuff for you. So it's almost like more of a project manager for the tech that's doing it. So I think you need to embrace it. You can't say it's going to take our jobs and get away from it, because you just get left behind.
No, exactly. I think so. I agree. I think that's why I like to talk about distribution a lot at the moment. I think you'll be a lot more orchestrating the distribution of whatever content is created, whether it's AI content created or created by creators or influencers. Orchestrating the distribution of that will still need some manual input, but you definitely won't need 10 people to do it. You probably do it by yourself. So I definitely think in the marketing field, if you're currently in a big team, whether it's in-house or within an agency, I would definitely be careful or try and already plan for the next step and try and be that person who understand the channel. You don't really, like you said, you don't really need to understand the optimization or the day-to-day platform kind of management, because that's likely completely going to go away. You're probably going to be able to push 2 buttons and it'll be all done for you, semi or fully done by AI. But you you need to be that person that will be employed by either a brand or an agency to like do the equivalent of what is currently like the job of maybe 5, 6, 7 people. So I think it brings this idea brings me to maybe our next topic, which is, you know, like how do you as a marketer, or you know, how do you stand out basically? How do you make yourself the go-to person that knows what's going on, how to have the best process to distribute whatever your company is doing, and that a founder or whoever is going to trust you to be their main go-to growth marketer to do that stuff. And so the segue is, you know, brings us here again to the, you know, why do we do this podcast? To, you know, to talk about that stuff, keep us on our toes, try and stay relevant, try a few things with the podcast as well. I don't know if it was a terrible transition or not, but I felt like I was trying. I was getting to it. And I think, well, it's a nice mix, like what we're doing here with this podcast, and how we're going to show you or tell you how we grow it, and the tactics that we use to do that. And some of these tactics are actually related to AI as well. So how do we start and grow a podcast about marketing, using marketing tactics, telling you what they are, and, you know, kind of like revealing the numbers as we grow. It's kind of where I was getting to.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. And before we move on to that in a bit more detail, just pick up on a point about how to maybe not stay relevant, but how to be a kind of modern day marketer, or, you know, growth leader, growth expert, whatever you want. It's really difficult to keep up to date with every single development that's going on in the world. But I do think that I kind of fall into two different camps. I think you don't have to have an opinion on everything, but the things that are most tightest in your sphere of what you do on a day-to-day, you definitely have to have an opinion on. You don't need to know everything about it, but you need to have an opinion on that stuff. And I think the only way to get an opinion is to just be constantly testing things and playing with things. And I personally, you know, wouldn't want to move outside of a role where I can have some hands-on testing and playing with things. You know, a lot of people are so quick they come in as an exec and they do some performance marketing and like, I know everything about this now, I want to move on to a strategic role. I never want to run ads again, I never want to do optimization again, never want to do reporting again. And as much as lots of that stuff is dull and can be tedious, I think if you don't do that, it's impossible to be able to do a relevant strategy if you aren't in the weeds just doing stuff on the day-to-day basis.
Exactly. Because I ask myself this question sometimes, and yeah, I know that we talk about this a lot, but I've been growing in marketing through digital quite fast. I've had the CMO title for that I was really looking to get eventually for like the last year and a half. And sometimes I ask myself, like, okay, I've got a very small team. I still run a lot of experiment myself, etc. Like, am I really, the true definition of what a CMO was compared to what I think it should be today? And I'm a bit. I think I'm in transition. I'm in transit into that new type of what I think the new type of senior marketer or CMO or whatever, like chief growth officer or whatever, should be in a company starting today or in the last few years. Because the flip side to this, if I was a CMO to a team, a full marketing team with like divisions and stuff of like 100 people. And that business is for some reason going under, like most business are at the moment, because the economy is, down the toilet. It's really hard to raise the next round. We've seen major companies in the UK going down rounds, or losing valuation, or completely disappearing. Like, for example, Made.com, like a big name in the UK, suddenly doesn't exist anymore. If I were in that position and I was not touching anything anymore, just managing people, being a people CMO type thing, just making key decisions on a weekly basis, but really managing managers and themselves managing managers, and then some people executing. If you lose that job today, I'll be shitting my pants. Like, what do you do next if you haven't done some execution in some of the channels that where you come from or you think are relevant today? What do you do? Especially in that age bracket that we're starting to enter now, mid 30s to, I don't know, maybe late 40s. In that period of time in your life when you're going into more senior roles, more managing roles, if businesses tomorrow don't need more than 5 people to run marketing because everything else is automated, and you only need someone who can write, someone who can shoot, a growth person to distribute and do the connections between everything, and maybe a data analyst or something, a more data person, and that's only 4. I don't even know what the 5 would be. The 5th would be maybe like someone else in those areas. But yeah, what do you do? So I think we both think about that a lot, and that kind of makes me it's reassuring me that doing what we do today and still being in the execution side of things in some of these channels is very important. And I definitely don't want to lose that for those reasons too.
Yeah, completely. It's kind of a difficult balance as well, because you inevitably, when you're in a more senior role, you have to be doing things that take you away from that hands to keyboard stuff. You might be, I don't know, pitch deck prep or business forecasting and modeling and all that kind of thing, that you feel like you haven't got time to be going and testing out some new, say TikTok strategy or SEO strategy or anything like that. But I think you just have to make time, and a lot of people don't help themselves by hiring a team, and especially at a startup level, you can be. I get asked quite a lot by people that should we get an agency or should we hire a team? And I think it's not always you can't always say that you should do one or the other, but I think a big issue that you can do is you could hire somebody that just comes in at too high a level. So if you hire a head of growth or a head of marketing or a CMO that's going to want to come in and be the highest salary in the company on day one, you aren't doing your company a service, because that's just an enormous outlay, and you're always going to be pushing them. You're going to be stressed to be trying to get to justify their role, and then they're going to be stressed because you're going to be on their back to have them justify their role. And I've been there myself. You join a startup probably too early. You're on a big salary. You are completely stressing out that every month when you're getting paid, you're just thinking, I feel quite guilty, even though I've done what I feel is some really good stuff. I've been hired too early, and it's a really horrible place to be in. So I think you don't have to go top end with the hire. I'm a big proponent of hiring someone in without. I think experience. Obviously, you need a bit of experience, but I'm not, when I'm hiring or advising on hiring, I'm not looking at qualifications, anything like that. I'm just looking at relevant experience or interest, and I think if you stick around that level, you end up with some really good people that want to be strategic, and they also can be executionary.
Yeah, no, that's true. And also, like, hiring people who just want to manage people. When you do that too early, that's where problems arise, when they expect things to be done by other people I think that's always been true in startup, but less true in scale up, and definitely not true in more established businesses. I I think that's about to change. That transition might take a few years because bigger businesses take time. But with everything that we're seeing right now, cutting costs, reducing teams, going a lot of like rounds of redundancies and stuff, like all of, I think across all layers, you you're gonna want to have people who can do the work, execute, but also think strategically about what they're doing. It's gonna be really hard to have one and the other. I think that's gonna meet in the middle, and that's kind of where I think there is a big opportunity, whether you're already senior or at a senior level or starting, because obviously the packages and stuff will be different, but I think in both cases there's a lot of opportunities to show that you can be a senior person that can also execute, but also do the forecasting, think about business unit like unit economics, and think about CAC, LTV, and more like investor facing, as well as being I can go on run TikTok ads if I want to. And I know the creative, and I know what works, and that kind of thing. Like I'm really fascinated by I think those changes are gonna happen pretty fast, and I think it's gonna create a lot of opportunity for the younger folks as well as older ones.
Yeah, definitely. And I think don't be that guy or girl that is just like, oh, I don't know anything about that stuff. That's not me. I know so many people that when you get into the nitty gritty, you scratch below the surface and you start talking about, I don't know whether it's attribution as a to throw a cliche word in there, or just the technical side of, because digital marketing is very technical. You have to work out why something isn't working a lot of the time and get in there. And I think that the more you can you might not know anything about it, but you just got to jump in and try and learn. I mean, there's anything you want to debug or fix, you can just go on the internet and you can find the answer to. So don't be the person that's like, tracking, I don't know, leave that to the devs. So I don't do that stuff.
And I think that's always been true. And that's for both of us. I think that's how we progressed over the last 10 years in the field of marketing, like broadly speaking. Just taking that opportunity, saying yes to things, being curious. What's the next thing, the next channel, or way of executing a channel that we already knew about. But I think everything that we're saying with the changes of like automation and everything, I think the thing is that it's even more true today, because businesses are going to look more for these people. Whereas before, there was still a lot of maybe management layers. And even if you were that person, you might not have been rewarded because someone was considered more of like a veteran in the field and brought in or whatever, like it happened to me in the past. Like I think those days are on their way out. Not completely finished, but it's transitioning pretty fast. And now if you're that curious person that says yes and get on with it and try things, I think the rewards are going to be even faster to come. So it's really cool.
Completely.
Really, really cool.
Well, closing the loop on that, how would you grow a podcast from 0 to 1?
From 0 to 1.
Let's do from 0 to 1, not 0 to 1 million. It's getting So let's talk strategy about that.
Let's do that. So I can talk a little bit about my experience 2 years ago, because we're kind of replicating some of that strategy, also using some of the pre-existing fruits from 2 years ago. But I think, it starts with committing to it. That's the number one thing. So we started last week. We're doing another one this week. We're going to stick to it every week and come back to you listeners or watchers on YouTube once we put that on YouTube, for it to become a ritual. I think that's how you build up the habit from people, and it starts from the inner circles, right? So we both have networks, we both have some level of audience in, whether it's on WhatsApp, people that we know from the industry, on LinkedIn, a bit of Twitter, whatever it is, just talking about it, you'll get some listeners for sure. And committing to doing it regularly is what's gonna snowball slowly but surely into more people listening to it and telling, hopefully, telling their friends, maybe some of them leaving reviews. It's not so much about, so I thought 2 years ago, I was doing a lot of work in finding, even the name of it was called Digital Marketing Finesse. Why did I pick digital marketing? Is because I wanted to be a keyword that someone would look for when they look for podcasts for a specific domain. I don't think that's the most useful thing that you can do, because I don't think that's how people mostly discover podcasts. It's mostly through word of mouth and just people liking what you're talking about and telling their colleagues or their friends, depending on the topic of the podcast. And then eventually what helps is if you end up in the top 50, top 100s leaderboards for your topic, that then maybe you get a little bit of organic growth on top of that. It's also being everywhere. So the way we're going to launch out is going to be available everywhere: Spotify, Apple, like all the major platforms. I still see podcasts to only release on Buzzsprout or whatever, those like hosting platform. No one goes there to listen to a podcast. You either use Apple Podcast or Spotify. So it starts with that. So 2 years ago, I did 10 episodes. I was using interviews as well. So we're going to do that as well. We're going to get some guests eventually. When you get guests, you get a little bit of their audience when they share. And if you do that every week, and every week you've got a new set of audience coming from that person to your podcast, and some people will stick around and listen to it more regularly. So we're going to do a bit of that. There's one thing that I was doing that I don't think we're going to do this time around, mainly because I couldn't find the technology to do it, is I was 2 years ago, I found this like link I could add to like my LinkedIn bio everywhere, that if you clicked on it from a desktop, wherever, like it worked kind of everywhere. It would well, actually, no, it was mostly on mobile. It would open your text message app, so iMessage or whatever on Android, with a pre-filled message to text me, and I would add that person to a WhatsApp distribution list. And that worked like crazy. After 2 months, I had like 350 people. I had to create like 3 different lists because there was a cap at the time on WhatsApp. I couldn't have more than 120 or 136 people or something like that. So I had to like split people in different lists. But what that meant is over time, every time an episode was going out, I could send a broadcast WhatsApp message to everyone to say, this episode is live now. And I would get straight away, about 100 listens over time, and then 200 listens in a very short amount of time. I managed to grow the listeners quite fast. And then what I would do with that, and I'm quite keen that we do something like that eventually, but I was asking people to write questions to future guests on WhatsApp with a voice note, and then I would put the voice note, so then the person would hear themselves into the episode. And that creates like engagement and kind of a nice engagement loop with being part of something, a bit more than just be passively listening to it, right? So we'll find a way to do that. But the tech that I was using, that was like someone made it on the internet. I think the website doesn't exist anymore, and now there's a lot of paid product for you to have like a link line. I'm sure we could probably find someone to help us to like make it again, but anyway, so that those, in a nutshell, those were the things that we are going to do, or that we're going to try and do to grow the podcast pretty fast. But I think pretty quickly we should be able to get about 100 and something people to listen to it just based on the people we know and just shouting about it
Yeah, okay.
regularly.
So that's
Is
KPI
that
one. Milestone one
yes?
was the first 100 listens.
Uh-huh. First 100 listens. So those 10 episodes that I did 2 years ago, they still get listens. Like every month I get like 5-10 listens. Like it's crazy. So then when you're on the platforms, the good thing about podcasts is like they do accrue some, like people come back eventually, or they find it because of the keywords again. Like there's a little effect that does happen. But I think it's all about consistency. Like if I didn't stop after 10 and I continued, I'll probably be at 100 by now. I've no question that it would be in the thousands of listens per episode now, easy. So I'm really keen to get back to that with you. That should be fun.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's interesting, the whole kind of, when you're talking about the WhatsApp broadcast list thing, it's
Yeah.
like building a community. I know everyone wants to build a community, and my wife was doing some work recently for Sony, the podcast show in London, and one of the people she interviewed for the magazine was saying that so many brands now will have a podcast. So you've got like Pampers, who have their own podcast about parent stuff, and it's just all brands tapping into community building. And we've seen with the rise of, for me, I feel like what so far has been like the pinnacle of communities is in the Web3 space, through NFT communities, and how quickly people would like spin up a business idea like an NFT, like a collection, and then they would have grown a community of 5, 10, 15,000 people in like the space for a week. And that's it's mad that you can do that. But I still don't think the concept of a community has fully been realized, because
No.
like you can have a one-to-many, like a broadcast list, which works, but then if you want to have like that peer-to-peer element, you need to inevitably get into a technology like Discord, and then you've got that barrier to entry of, or you've got the management overhead of running a Discord channel. Then you have the people, not everyone is using Discord really, so it's like it's difficult for people to pick up. It's not the most intuitive piece of software. And then Slack even less so, because that's very much on the business side. So I think it's gonna be really interesting what happens with communities in the next couple of years, and I'm hoping that there'll be some breakthrough that makes the ability of building and keeping a community really simple.
I agree. I think what's missing with community in a lot of cases is like there's not enough rituals for people to actually exchange with each other. That's what's really hard to do. So, for example, the reason why I was doing a broadcast list is because I didn't think people wanted to be in another marketing group or Slack channel where really, and I'm probably same as you, like I've tried a few and I'm still in a few. It's really hard to get any sort of engagement because one, some people are in competition with others, so they don't really want to share everything that they're doing. Like there's like a limit to the level of detail they want to share with something. Second, do you really want to spend time explaining everything that you do to someone else that you never met on the marketing front? Like how deep are you going to go? It's always going to be like very surface level. And also like you're just too busy. Like everyone's life is crazy. It's really hard to, there's some Slack channels, like marketing Slack channels that I've been in for like a few years. I haven't opened like for more than a year because my daily Slack is my daily Slack with my job. And then you've got between that plus your family, plus your friends on WhatsApp, all these different type of groups, they take too much time. It's really hard to have a strong enough or a set of rituals that would make people really commit to talking to each other. So that's why I think newsletters today are growing much faster because again, like a broadcast list is a one to many. You don't really expect people to come back to you on what you're saying to them. They're just receiving information, and maybe that's it for now. People still call them communities. So I mean, the term is being used and abused all over the place. Like some people could call their Instagram followers communities. So that's even worse. So yeah, we'll have a think. But I think when it comes to this podcast, there's a lot of things that we haven't spoken about that we probably will do, because again, now with some AI automation tools and new software coming up, we could easily spin off this podcast into a newsletter, use the newsletter as a tool to get more referrals and people like get the word of mouth going through the newsletter, because newsletters allow you to have placement into other newsletters with like recommendation engines. You can also have your own referral program. So we could, I would love for us to start doing stickers and merch and shit like that about the podcast. But you could get referrals into other marketers, and having like a sense of like a tribe sense doesn't really mean it's a community, but people who listen to this might feel like referring 2 or 3 of their friends to get a couple of stickers from us that to show support, right? And things like that could be enough just to get the ball rolling. So I think attaching ourselves to a newsletter, using the content that we have between audio and videos to like slice it and dice it and putting it everywhere. You can now automate everything between YouTube Short, Reels, TikTok. Like all of these platforms can be pretty much automated without us having to touch anything, or not much. I think all of that those are the things that we didn't mention earlier, but that we will do to bring this series to life a bit more and grow it a lot faster. I'll be surprised if we actually go. I wouldn't be surprised if we go past 100 listens very fast and get to a much bigger milestone quickly.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, there's obviously so much you can do with creating content for channels like TikTok and Reels that it just naturally gets you that broader exposure. Yeah. All it takes is a few interesting piece of conversation to, I'm not necessarily saying go viral, but just get that wider reach. And I think newsletters is some people would say it's like an old thing, but I think it's actually had such a resurgence now with like Substack and all the competitors to Substack and Beehive that I know you're a fan of. And there's I was just looking at some of the Substack the other night. A journalist that I used to listen to on the radio is no longer on the radio, but now he just does his Substack, and he has tens of thousands of people that pay £2 a month. And I'm not saying for the monetary element, but I think it's really interesting, that new way of paying for not necessarily for information, but for somebody's opinion and somebody's take on something. And I love that. I love that way that that the kind of industry has gone, and newsletters aren't just spam anymore. It's actually something that I've curated my inbox, so I've get that I know the newsletters that I'm going to get every day. I have time set aside every week to go through them. I pull knowledge out. I share it with my team, share it with the wider company. I just store it for myself. I put it in our Slack that we put in our Notion that we put together for things to chat about on this podcast. And I think newsletters are the future, really.
Yeah. No, I agree. And it kind of closes the loop as to like what we're talking about at the beginning with AI and like curing loneliness with something like platforms like OnlyFans, which is the same. It's literally like a Substack for sex. It's the same thing, right? The only difference is that instead of paying for a platform where everyone gets the same content, you're getting a direct access into somebody's life or content, whatever the content is, most of the time explicit. It's very interesting because some individual all over the world are making a ton of money directly for themselves without having to work with anyone. And I think you can easily imagine a company that would spun out AI agents or replicas to do the same thing as OnlyFans without having to have any human being anymore. You can easily see people spending a few quid every month to get access to that, and getting millions of people to do that. So there's major businesses to be created on that front for sure still.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really interesting. I was having a chat with a friend the other day about he had this idea that in a few years' time, influencers as we know them now, let's say your typical Instagram influencer, won't necessarily or may not could not necessarily exist, and brands could create their perfect AI persona or personas that they can dressing their clothes, they can have interacting with their stuff, and they can almost be it become a point where you wouldn't necessarily know if the influencer or the account that you're following on Instagram and scrolling the feed of or looking at the stories of is actually a real person at all, or if it's just an AI. And that is, again, like closing the loop, like you say, is kind of scary, but you can definitely see that there's massive business opportunities to be had there.
For sure, and it's already the case. Like when the emergence or growth of micro influencing, when it comes to influencer marketing, as we call it, and going for people who are not with big followings, these people, when they create content and you put an ad money behind it, it works. It doesn't work because they are famous. It just works because they are a familiar face to you. It's a human being to a human being. But the kind of AI layer to this is like, you wouldn't know if you can't tell that the person you're watching is actually not human and is not famous. I think it would yield the same results. So there's definitely some use case for that are, like we said a few times, it is scary, but it it does open the door to like some businesses ideas, some new avenues for marketers, and definitely something to watch out and not turn your back to, because you'll be left on the sideline if you do. So good chat, man.
Sorry, I'm muted because it's nap time and the kids are going crazy outside. So maybe we should wrap it up for this week.
Yeah, let's do that. See you, Jake.
Well, that's a harsh cut off, but yeah, okay, let's leave it at that. See you, yo.
See ya.
See ya.